Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. However you are tuned in for us, yes, we are back here in the studio today and doing all those things that we try to do pretty well anyway, bringing you the very many different types of issues and things affecting us here in the borderland. And boy, has it been a consequential, well, since last week, just under a week here at this point, but the results still rolling in for some of those national election totals, some of those questions that we were hoping to have answered for you, or at least analyzing for you on election night, still remaining unanswered. A lot of the Texas things, of course, decently settled, and some of those things very much, well, we have some expectations of what will be coming next for all of that, but some of the national ones, and of course, some of the questions about control of Congress and even the Senate now, still a little bit in flux, or at the very least coming down to some more showdowns and challenges here. So if you're with us over on the social media, as Amber Banda already is, thank you very much. Do appreciate it. Yes, we are back with you live here in studio. Had to take some time out of the office here for, well, we'll get into that here in just a bit, because Ron Holstein Rathwell, welcome back. Do appreciate that. Looks like we're doing the peace sign here today as well. And then we got the rock on from Amber Banda there as well. Do appreciate it. Because, yeah, talking about the things that affect us here in the borderland are definitely, well, one of the reasons I keep wanting to do these kind of things, and maybe even more updates coming on some very big subjects and those national issues, on those national races and such. As we also have Austin Redpearn over with us on the social media. That's one of the better ways you can comment throughout the show, and why we keep mentioning those, because yeah, if you want to add your 2 cents, you want to chime in before we end up having those phone lines open, that's the best place to do it. So follow their example. Also do appreciate those dropping those likes and reacts as always, because helps with all those algorithmic things. Again, if you appreciate the ability to talk about the things that affect us here in the borderland, have our own local discussion about it, because no one else is going to talk about it the way we do. So we also have Sam Farone. Let me know if I'm saying that one right. Farone. Anyway, they'll stop guessing till you tell me the right way too. Over on the social media, hello to you as well. We're going to dive back into it, back in the saddle, back at it this week, back with brand new live shows for you here. So hope you appreciated some of the retrospective and some of the advancements here. So, I mean, yeah, there's been nothing like really consequential going on election wise ever since. Like, everything was pretty settled election night, right? No? Oh, okay. Well, we'll keep delving into it. Yep, we are going to be live the rest of this week here. Took some time out of the office here. Had an interesting opportunity that I'll tell you about here in just a bit, because there might be more chances at it for you all as well. But in the meantime, yes, back live, back in the saddle. Going to bring you new shows and new interviews, as we usually do at this point and these times during the program here. So let's just dive right into it with some of the big subjects going on here right now. Of course, the congressional race is something that cannot even begin to be ignored as part of it. I mean, where we left you on election night, there was looking like a trajectory towards Republican control of Congress, of course, as it stands today, according to NBC News. There are still the strong possibility, but of the races formally called, resignate, like people stepping out of it, saying, I've conceded the race, those kind of things, looking at about 212 as we are as of last check and this hour. For the Republicans, and for Democrats, about 205 seats totally secured. And of course, one of those interesting totals, speaking about the local situation here, is that for the New Mexico 2nd Congressional District, it is looking like that there is going to be, some more finalization. I mean, just for perspective, even here locally, here in the county of El Paso, it actually is that the final election results have not been certified yet, because there is a process. No, we're not talking like California's process, which is a different bag of cats overall. And John Brazelton, I am always amazed by your sense of time here, saying that we're taking a month's vacation and getting paid for it. If you got like a TARDIS or something, or some kind of time dilation device that makes it seem like a few days ends up being a month here, I'm also not sure if I would use it the way you're using it, because it makes it seem like a little bit of time is forever, but maybe you're not using it the right way. All I gotta say here, Kathy Coder saying so disappointed in the local politics. Also responding to what RJ was saying, that saying that D.A. Rosales, an assistant, former hide and seek 3-time national champs, using skills to avoid subpoenas. Yes, that is another one we're going to be talking about today. Some official court filings. This is not just a a gossip moment here, court filings detailing these kind of things there as well. So also have a Glenn Stewart. Good afternoon to you as well. And like I said, we'll be taking those phone calls a little bit later in the show, as we usually do, but comments throughout, as is the norm here. So the balance of power in Congress still a little bit in flux, though there are still those expectations to be had. But the Senate, specifically the one where at the very least it's going to be status quo, but we'll see what deja vu all over again when it comes to the runoff in Georgia determining to an extent, the balance of power within the National Senate is certainly a thing. But again, just for example, local results, having just checked over with the El Paso County Elections Department, we do have some more data, some more details out there, such as there were actually the total number of voters that were accepted was 165,067 for the number 2022 general election, with a number of ballots that were rejected, about 130, not about exactly 139 provisional ballots rejected or pending, mail ballots rejected or pending 154, so about 293, exactly 293, those rejected and or pending so far. And so getting closer, probably can expect it within the next couple of days. Of course, different states have different situations. No, we're not California, where votes could still be arriving as of tonight or tomorrow, one or the other, long as it was postmarked by Election Day. So there aren't going to be any firm results out of there for a minute yet before they certify them, so don't hold your breath on that one. But locally, and again, based on some of the interviews that we had done with those that were, well, running within our area, we are specifically looking at, and of course, Eric von Holstein-Rathlow is saying Florida can recover from a hurricane faster than Arizona can count votes. Yeah, I know Maricopa County and those places, there were even some election day lawsuits or court filings or emergency injunctions being sought. And some of those worked, most of them didn't, to my understanding. We weren't paying as close attention to Arizona's politics, except for kind of that national view, those national issues that we, well, definitely keep our eye on. But in the meantime, in the aggregate, looking like that's the real question is about how much the status quo will change whenever it comes to the Senate. And again, in the House of Representatives, what the actual balance will be, though there is still a pretty decent expectation at this point that it will be a change within the House of Representatives. How deep it will be is one remaining question, including, I know it's come up sometimes and not exactly our local scope, but in the vein of this whole discussion, what is going to be happening in I believe it's the 8th Congressional District in Colorado, the one that Lauren Boebert, a Republican, has been holding, and it might go to a runoff there with, I think those were the last vote totals I saw were within the thousands of each other or even less. So razor-thin margins in a lot of places, and yes, those will be determining it. But what I was trying to get at here is that actually the New Mexico 2nd Congressional District had interviews with the incumbent Republican Yvette Harrell, who appears now to have been voted out of that office. And now it would be Gabe Vasquez, the Democrat challenger, based out of Las Cruces primarily. We, of course, did reach out to his campaign as part of this program. Did not receive a response back before, well, essentially, we're no longer able to schedule our interviews even before Election Day. So see if we can get them on the show to talk a little bit about what they're going to be doing with office and those kind of things. And the Ed Clore posting up, interesting, find your vote in El Paso County, clicking on the date you voted for, because honestly, yeah, I got a text during the early voting period saying, thank you for voting. Would I like to tell them how I voted, kind of thing, because the fact that you voted is a matter of public record and is even put out there. You can find it on the El Paso County Elections website to find out exactly when it was tabulated. Well, maybe not the moment that it was counted through, because it goes through the machine there. And that's part of the reason that early voting results are able to come out right as polls close, 7 p.m. on Election Day locally. But it's a little bit more complicated than that, about, of course, your vote still being secret, but the public data of it. Yeah, got a text saying, would you like to tell me how you voted? And I said, I'm not going to do that, but I would love to talk with you all about it. Some of that information we shared previously. So a lot of moving parts still with elections, still some of those national questions, of course, waiting to be seen, but whether or not, the biggest one at this point, whether or not we will have a different Speaker of the House and who that will be. There is technically a path where there could be a very slim, if any, margin within the House of Representatives, and that is the real question at this point here. But of course, that's not quite as locally as we like to usually be, because there are still some big local questions including beyond counting votes, runoff's going to be happening in the majority of the city council races happening this time around. So, and Eric McNabb saying we noted who you voted for, Polk. Bet you'd be surprised, but again, I don't actually talk about how I vote for because that makes it way too easy to label. Oh, you voted for this person or that person. I can discount you that way. Makes it harder when you don't actually have a nice label you can apply to someone besides what you argue about it, of course. Because if you're just having to actually deal with the issues opposed to, well, I reject your way you voted here, makes it a little bit harder to actually deal with then, doesn't it? Or at least neat for you to kind of put into its own little cubbyhole, and that's why we do it and why we don't demand that people declare their vote, but you better damn well have been voting. That's my declaration and why that definitely needs to be happening there. And we'll have more comments about what is going on there. And anyway, let's get back to that first break of this hour right now. You are, of course, tuned into Talk El Paso, airing live. Yes, back live here in the studio, here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Taking those phone calls a little bit later here in the program if you are so inclined to do so. But in the meantime, like I said, those comments coming in over on the social media, and we'll keep getting to those. Otherwise, first break of this hour, back after that, talk more about some of those local races after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
On your El Paso Freeway's got an accident blocking the right lane. I-10 westbound at Paisano Drive exit and a backup to Geronimo. Expect delays. I-10 westbound at Paseo del Norte. El Paso Police and Fire responding to a crash there. Southbound Joe Battle at Pelicano, an earlier accident blocking the left lane, and an accident South Desert Boulevard before Red has cleared all lanes back open. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
As you crunch the numbers trying to get the most out of your dollar, we'll throw in a $1,000 inflation bonus. Woo-hoo! Much better. Listen every hour from 9 a.m. through 5 p.m. weekdays for your chance to win $1,000.
Listen to win $1,000 every hour, weekdays from 9 a.m. through 5 p.m. It's the 1,000 inflation bonus on News Talk 690 a.m.
This report is sponsored by the Our American Stories podcast.
Buffalo Bill Cody is a name we all know, but a man we don't know much about. Be sure to catch this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
With an open channel,
I guess just try to keep channels open.
We welcome open-minded individuals.
I try to keep an open mind to all issues.
With open arms.
I think we need to always have our eyes open.
For open conversation. And when you open the iHeartRadio app, you open a whole new world. Wherever you are.
What should America do about immigration crisis?
I guess open the borders, but at the same time, check everyone that's coming in.
Open the gates.
A free download in the App Store or at ktsmradio.com.
A lot of things have changed with the real estate market this year. Hi, it's Glenn. But with Brian Birds of eXp Realty, you don't have to worry about whether it's a seller's market or a buyer's market because Brian's exclusive options and unique strategies make the market work for you, whatever's going on. Brian spends 25 times more on marketing than most agents make in a year. That means he's going to get your home sold faster and for more money because the potential buyers will see your home. And that is what creates demand, which gets you faster result and top dollar. In fact, he guarantees to sell it or he'll buy it himself. Another great option you need to sell quickly is Brian's instant cash offer. No showings, open houses, no hassle, just money in your pocket. Brian Birds is the agent that I would trust in El Paso. Besides that, well over 400 people have given Brian a 5-star Google review. You can read them by Googling Brian Birds. That's Brian, B-U-R-D-S, or check out brianbirds.com.
Because you never hear this.
Hey, hon, I'm late. Chris, I am so pleased you missed the beginning of our meeting.
Thanks for making me wait, Dad. I talked to a lot of strangers.
Check on your commute. Stay informed. Traffic and weather all day. Or you might never hear the end of it.
Well, you were late to our anniversary dinner that one time.
Yes, how could I forget?
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development, the El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today. For good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
Recently, we hit the streets and found out how informed people really are.
Yes, I'm on top of events.
Most news, yes.
Except for these two.
I am not on top of events.
I'm not on top of my events, no.
They were clueless that every morning they can plug into the world with the news, weather, and traffic info that'll make their lives so much easier and more informed. Just like you and I do. Stay informed with El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
You want to be a showstopper like The Miz? You want to be awesome? Then you'll want to have a game plan. Whether you're a champion or a bettor, you've got to be responsible. The DraftKings Sportsbook offers all the tools you need. You can set a realistic budget and bet within your means. You can set time, deposit, and wager limits so you can have a personal game plan for having fun while being responsible. I practice safe bets, and so should you. Visit DraftKings.com/responsible-gaming to learn about all these tools and more.
Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/responsible gaming for details and state-specific responsible gambling resources.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel, over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk, up on all those, and comments coming in from most of them. Anyway, Twitter's more of a DM kind of thing, I know, but if you want to get at us there, you certainly can. We're doing some slight graphical upgrades if you really want to. You can see them over there on our various channels, whichever works for you, really. If you can see it, you can hear it, you can talk about and make the comments that you want to. You are in the right place, as we have Eric McNabb, John Brazelton, James Radcliffe, Eric Von Holstein Rathlow, Ed Clore, RJ, Ida Beza Gardner, hello to you as well, Kathy Codry, Austin Redfern, Gled Surt, Sam Barone, trying that one out for size here, and more. Also dropping those likes, reacts, Ida Beza Gardner, Ed Clore, Glenn Stewart, Robert Haynes, and Amber Banda do appreciate it. And one of the better ways you can get at us there. Back in the saddle here today. Again, talking a little bit about some of those national situations to get the start of the week going right anyway. But of course, the local ones are more than a little bit of a interesting situation there now, isn't it? With that, about 165,000 people actually going out to vote in our area, some impacts being seen, and one of the bigger questions that we didn't, I guess, really answer coming out of election night will be for the governor's race. How did El Paso? Of course, we did see that former El Paso congressman and Democratic nominee for the race, Robert Francis Beto O'Rourke, did not end up falling short of bridging the gap here. And I know there was at least one billboard that I had seen in town of all of El Paso voted, we'd make the difference kind of thing. I kind of thought at the time that this might be a wrong surmising that all of El Paso would vote for the hometown boy, I guess was the thinking behind it here. But if those that even did go out to vote, it was roughly not quite 2-1 O'Rourke to Abbott in El Paso anyway. So not terrifically surprising, but nowhere near. If that had been a part of any campaign strategy, I know it had been discussed as a possibility, like a back of the napkin kind of jot down thinking going into the election, but O'Rourke got about 103,000 votes, let's call it 104,000 to Greg Abbott's, of course, the now re-elected for his next term of office Republican governor, with about 57,000 votes and change. So like I said, not quite 2-1 here locally, but nowhere near what we need to make up the final margin that came out of that, being hundreds of thousands of votes more for that. And that, again, if it had ever been part of the electoral thinking of the gamesmanship that ultimately ends up playing into any kind of election, that has not borne out in any of the recent elections, or at the very least going back to 2018, the Senate campaign, where O'Rourke was, of course, challenging Texas Senator Ted Cruz, and Republican, of course. that didn't work out either. There was this idea that the results later in the night coming out of El Paso may have made the difference. And yes, there was slightly more voting in 2018 than there was in this midterm election, closer into the 200,000 range and a bit beyond. But it didn't work then either. So I would hesitate to say that it was truly a part of the thinking for the polling that El Paso would deliver the difference, because frankly, we got decades, if not generations, of work to do in getting people out to the polls before that even just the bulk amount of voters can start being relied upon in this local area and anything besides local races. Like, yes, local races, of course, are going to still be relying on the local voters to turn out, or at the very least convincing those that do turn out to vote for you, I think is probably the more accurate way to put the way things go these days. RJ putting it, steal El Paso, steal the state. Yeah, I mean, there's just not enough votes. That's just what it comes down to. At the very least, in either of the two elections we're referring to, the 2018 or now 2022, there's just been not the bulk amount of votes. I think it was close. I think it was close in 2018 to where if all of them had gone for O'Rourke, it may have been close to making a difference, but did not end up being that in this case, because the margin was decently split enough to just not make it viable. The final totals actually coming out for that, with Abbott getting about 54%, about 4.4 million, to O'Rourke's 43.8. So 55 to 44%, with Abbott getting about 4.4 million and O'Rourke 3.5. So even just the total amounts of votes in El Paso would not have made that difference, even if there are some interesting projections being made. McNabb saying that, I guess referring to O'Rourke, they're going to unseat Ted Cruz in 2024 and is going to help flip Texas for Biden. I'd be very interested to know which data you're looking at here, because the trends being looked at for Texas so far, yes, the whole blue wall along the border wasn't really cracked as it was. I mean, there was a decent split within those South Texas races that were interesting to keep your eye on. Some of the ones that we're looking at, such as with the Texas House the Texas House elections, 15 and 34, breaking primarily for the Democratic incumbents, the only one really being flipped, so to speak, being the uncontested race, the race where there was no incumbent to be contested, I should say. That, of course, being in the Texas 15th congressional districts, with De La Cruz, the Republican, defeating Vallejo 53 to, let's just call it 45%. And Eric McNabb getting close to the idea of Cruz and O'Rourke there, losing by 2. I mean, it was decently close here, and that's why it may have been close enough to if all the votes in El Paso had gone that way. But of course, I mean, as much as the common wisdom is El Paso being red or blue or whatever it is, it's still non-voting. So there just haven't been enough votes to actually be the bulk of the difference there. So then, I mean, there's, like Vernon Holstein Rathwell going a little bit more with the money laundering idea of it, which I do not subscribe to. But whether or not the actual governor's race was important or not, I guess that gets closer to something that I've been mentioning, that actually what it is, that there's the political machine that the O'Rourke campaign built up around particularly the 2018 election. And one of the reasons why it wasn't so much cope as it was to say, well, we were close, and that's the best, that's really good what we can do. I mean, you may say close or no cigar, you didn't get the brass ring, what does it matter? And that's because the political machine that came out of that entire election enterprise, I mean, you don't visit every county in Texas as they did and just think like, well, there's nothing more to be done here. Pack it up, boys. We're out of it. I mean, there's groundwork. There has been activation being done. And I think that if there is to be any change in some of the, well, just any statewide office in Texas in the near future, it's probably going to be either built on or strongly using that kind of a network that was created. That's powered by people. And that has been, again, it's a little bit harder to see in, well, it doesn't show up in elections on its own, but I guess kind of the way that's the support and candidacy of Donald Trump, for those not paying attention out of 2016, may have seemed to rise from the depths of ocean like Godzilla. The fact of the matter is, it was kind of submarining all along the entire way. Some of the public blips that people saw, either with his, I don't know, political statements previously, or of course reality TV appearances and shows hosting, may have seemed like aberrations, like, oh, that's the only time he pops up. But that's just when it really came to public notice. And I'm not by any means trying to compare public popularity or, again, reality show appearances to this, but in a similar kind of vein, you only see it when it surfaces during elections with this whole political machine that was built up by the O'Rourke campaign and still is kind of self-sustaining. The amount of texts I got during the election times from, I mean, a lot of different campaigns and issues and those kind of things, but I would say the vast majority I got were either O'Rourke campaign or O'Rourke related kind of things. So yeah, it can be hard to see. That's what I'm trying to get at here. But to think that therefore it just goes away and will never come back again would be incorrect. Anyone who has ever studied mushrooms, the whole concept of mycelium is that, sure, we see mushrooms when they pop up, the fruiting bodies that they're known, but that's actually not the bulk of that organism, of the actual, that's just kind of the essentially reproductive organ, take that as you will. But the rest of the actual main bulk of even just the weight of that organism is underground, more or less always there. If you're actually seeing the circle of mushrooms, we don't really get them around here. We're not wet enough, but head back east or even onto the west coast, you can see them. And that's not because they're the fairy rings of old lore, if you want to go with that kind of a thing, but because that's where in the middle of it, where the actual body of it is. So it may seem spontaneous. They're just popping up, but it's been there all along. And that's why understanding the actual trends of what's going on with campaigns and the groundwork or underground work, so to speak, is still there for it is very interesting. So, and yeah, if you're mad about other unsubstantiated theories, good luck with that here. But otherwise, we're going to go ahead and take that next break. And okay, we'll talk about more local things, including those 3 city council runoffs coming up after this break. So got to take that one right now. Again, you are tuned into Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Getting closer to those phone lines. We'll make that announcement once those are open. But in the meantime, still comments coming in over on the social media. Keep those going. Pop them up as they are the most relevant or interesting to talk about in the meantime. But back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
On I-10 westbound, a multi-vehicle crash is blocking the right lane at Paisano Drive exit. Watch for a backup to Geronimo. A multi-vehicle accident I-10 westbound at Red is blocking the right shoulder. I-10 westbound Paseo del Norte, accident reported. An earlier crash is cleared. Joe Battle southbound at Pelicano, and Montana Avenue is slow in both directions from Geronimo to Global Reach with 5-minute delays. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. Where can you start holiday shopping for a season full of savings? Lowe's, actually. Check back daily for deals during Black Friday month and save $1,281 now on a 4-piece LG kitchen suite. Only at Lowe's. Offer valid through 11/16. Exclusions apply. See store for details.
You wash your hands, you brush your teeth, but what about the nose? How do you clean your nose? With Navage. Navage uses powered suction to pull saline in one nostril, around the back of the nose, and out the other nostril, flushing out allergens, mucus, and germs. And it's why cleaning your nose, the body's air filter, is the next evolution in daily personal hygiene. People try Navage for lots of reasons. Sinusitis, colds, allergies, snoring, things that make it hard to breathe through your nose. But over time, they find that cleaning their nose makes them feel better, a lot better. Over 3 million Navage users have written more than 100,000 reviews, averaging 4.7 stars, saying, best product I've ever used, and amazing, I love my Navage. Navage helps you breathe better, sleep deeper, and snore less, but the biggest payoff is improved health. Navage is good personal hygiene and can help you stay healthier. At Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Target, and online. Navage, N-A-V-A-G-E. Clean nose, healthy life.
Hello, I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update. El Paso Electric started improvements on its electrical infrastructure along North Saragossa Road to Salt Kleinfeld on the Far East Side this morning. The project will consist of replacing transmission and distribution power lines and the installation of steel poles to ensure reliability in electrical services. It'll be affecting traffic in that area. The construction will be from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. and then start again from 9 p.m. to 6 6 a.m. There will be road closures intermittently involved. Vista del Sol, Pelicano, Rojas, Saragosa, Montwood, Golden Gate, and Saul Kleinfeld will be affected. The project is expected to end on January 23rd of next year. And expect cooler temperatures and breezy conditions across the borderland this week as we see a series of disturbances and cold fronts. Temperatures will stay cooler to colder over the next few days, with highs dropping into the 50s and lows into the 30s and 20s in Las Cruces. I'm Iraca Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. We start off our work week with the cooler air mass that moved in the morning. Now that's going to leave most of us with freezing temperatures tonight, and we may be dealing with our first freeze of the season in the El Paso metro area. Our cooler air will remain in place as a couple more fronts are expected to move through this week, each one bringing in some colder air, keeping us well below average. Log on to kfoxtv.com for your very latest forecast.
This season is full of can't-miss moments. Like getting an updated COVID vaccine. It protects against the original COVID virus and Omicron. Find updated COVID vaccines for everyone 5 and older at vaccines.gov.
Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
The SEC just gave a controversial ruling, creating an enormous risk for almost every single cryptocurrency out there. I'm Mark Moss, helping you navigate the decentralized revolution. Listen to The Mark Moss Show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This report is sponsored by the Mark Moss Show podcast.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so. Being on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter @Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. However you may be tuning in, thank you for doing so and dropping those likes and reacts. We do appreciate Eric McNabb, Ida Basic Gardner, Ed Clore, Glenn Stewart, Robert Haynes, and Amber Banda. And of course, they are price watchers out there in the audience, including RJ and Kathy Codry saying, Thanksgiving dinner this year going to cost about $35 more. Also, there's been the hints about a turkey shortage out there. I mean, your mileage may vary depending on where you're listening to this here, but we're actively in my family looking at maybe other things being done this year instead of it. But RJ saying my credit union has easy financing for turkey, same-day loans now available. Tongue-in-cheek, I get you there, but also please don't finance a pizza. We've talked about that previously, about how they're offering financing for delivery food orders. And I'm just saying, please don't do that. If you're in a situation, there are resources in the community help you able to get the food and support, basic level support you need. So please do not finance a pizza. I don't feel like I can be any more clear with that, though. The RJ also saying high interest rates. Yeah. And I mean, the election results will, of course, be still talking about those and the factors about them, because I mean, there's a lot of results, including, of course, in the local elections. This still, out of 4 city council races that we had here locally, 1 being decided, but 3 of them, we're going to have part 2 coming up December 16th, I do believe, is the day that we are going to be looking at that in districts 1 and district, let me get my numbers here right here, because one of them, we do have Isabel Salcedo from District 5 moving on to her next term of city council, but the only one that was able to lock up the election either as an incumbent or as a challenger for it. Then, of course, District 1, that one going to a runoff, and then District 6, the other incumbent still on the ballot there, Claudia Lizette Rodriguez, who we had previously on the show, not able to get that 50% plus 1, getting about 43% of the vote, and will be facing I guess still technically, but soon to be former state rep Art Fierro. And so those, and I mean, the district as described by El Paso Matters, covering the area from George Dieter Drive to Loop 375 and a small portion of the lower valley. Okay, I'm one of those nerds that I will look up the district maps and try to analyze trends with one of it here, but it's an interesting situation there. And then, of course, in District 8, Bettina Olivares being the leader there, heading into a runoff with Chris Canales. And of course, in District 1, again, no one really cracking much beyond 40% in any of these races. I mean, the top runners in all of these, including, of course, the incumbent there, Claudia Lizette Rodriguez, getting about 43%. Bettina Olivares, about 40% in District 8, and Brian Kennedy in District 1 getting 41%, facing off Annalisa Cordova Silverstein, about 25% of the vote there. So, I mean, those are some of the interviews that we have both brought you, and we'll add some of the things with it. So we'll be revisiting those interviews as we get closer to that election date as well. But yeah, we'll be doing through the time warp again, kind of what it ends up feeling like. But of course, one of the more significant things happening regionally, not just with the city council elections, and probably not going to be helping out the whole election fatigue issue we've been talking about, the simple fact and idea that there have been so many elections. But one of the things and kind of the upsets happening in our area in overall pretty decent time for congressional incumbents within our broadcast area. But of course, New Mexico's 2nd congressional district, again, the incumbent Yvette Harrell, falling 49.7% to the Democrat Gabe Vasquez, 50.3%, a difference of just over about 1,000 votes there. So that race being called for them. So yeah, that's a bit of a problem and bit of a change from one of the things that was, of course, being the incumbent, that whole narrative of incumbents doing well here. Yeah, not quite working out there, even if in the Texas 16th and 23rd congressional districts held respectively by Democrat Veronica Escobar and then Republican Tony Gonzalez, them pretty handily winning their respective races in these cases here. So not exactly, I would call it a great time, but also the state of New Mexico looking congressionally speaking entirely blue. So very different situations, and we'll see how those continue to stack up as we get into the next term of office between the state lines here. And of course, just a little bit further to the north there, that potentially going to a runoff with a difference of 1,000 votes or the order of a couple thousand votes between Lauren Boebert and Ada Lee, of course, Democrat incumbent, and Frisch, the Democrat challenger in the Colorado House District 3. I may have said 8 earlier. It's 3. So, yeah, that's an interesting one there. But, of course, we'll be going back to the ballots and to the polls. But some of the questions about beyond that, it was a mixed bag, of course, for, well, public funding. The bonds for the city of El Paso, again, I have that mailer around here somewhere that I got probably buried under several piles of other mailers that I've also received. The public funding, the El Paso Progress Bond, I think it was being called, it was able to end up passing, though not necessarily all by the same kind of margins over at El Paso Inc. City gets support with street bonds, but not all on board. Of course, the roughly $272 million in the general obligation debt issuance that would come along with that were able to pass. About 61% of El Pasoans were voting for Proposition A, that the bulk of the money, $237 million. And it was interesting to see the idea of that actually moving through, given them some of the public sentiment here, but it's able to go through, of course, though there are some, again, the El Paso Inc. article references some interesting back and forth on some of these, including noting former state representative Joe Pickett on there, who did put his hat in the ring for one of those city council races, but ended up dropping out ahead of that. But of course, some of the other money that was also on there when it comes to parks and then sustainability and environmental conservation efforts, those also managing to pass, but with slimmer margins. But of course, then it was the city elections when it comes to the Cañetillo Independent School District's elections. One of the things noted by El Paso Inc. in the city of El Paso bond election is that there was a supportive PAC, a PAC that was pushing forward. Again, that's who I got that mailer from, among other things. Now, I don't live in the Cañetillo Independent School District, but I was able to just be driving through it at certain points and seeing some of the public posting that there was some legal challenges of, including the committee that was out and supporting and actually putting out the posters and flyers and yard signs. You saw them if you drove around, essentially. Still getting used to it. Northwest El Paso at almost any point over the last month when it really comes down to it. And so the interesting factor there is that those were some of the major pushes I saw. Again, wasn't getting mailers for that race because I, don't live and haven't lived in that district. For those of you who are, we'd be very curious to know what kind of mail you were receiving on that, because that was one of the more obvious instances I could see where there was an organized and not just kind of grassroots word of mouth campaign to oppose the actual expenditure of public money. That, of course, was the Canutillo Independent School District's second attempt at doing that, having done so in the previous general election and being denied on that one. And this attempted upgrade by about 30%, give or take, increased expenditure also being denied by voters in that case from about the $180 million range into that low $200 million range. So there are a lot of questions about what happens next with that. Well, they'll take another attempt at that. But I said at the time that a lot of people will be watching that election and the outcomes of it, because they'll be determining some trajectories for future ones. And I think at the very least, look at the difference between the public outreach was done between the Canutillo and the City of El Paso bond efforts. And you can see some differences in how the outcome actually worked here, despite, at least for the bad people talking on this program, similar-ish sentiments. I got to say, a lot of concerns and or opposition from the, I would say fair to say, not the scientific poll by any means, majority of the listeners, or at least callers and those putting their opinion out there on this program, but still very different outcomes for it. So there are, and Kathy Cody, kind of one of those questions about it. How many times have they claimed that they're going to fix the roads, but they never got fixed? Yeah, that is definitely one part of the questions here. And also asking me about turkey shortages. Again, your mileage may vary. I would just say make sure to get your turkey early this year, but don't buy all the turkeys. Don't be that guy leaving with a shopping cart full of turkeys. Like, if you're going to use them, if you're working for a soup kitchen or going to hand them out, please, yeah, do that. But don't be the guy being like, I'll have all the turkeys and no one else will have any, and they'll all have to come to me. Don't use Dwight Schrute logic. Please don't do that. Anyway, that do for that next break it now. And as we do it usually at this point during the show, we will go ahead and open all those phone lines as we do, because of course the number to call there if you want to is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
2 crashes on the I-10 westbound slowing traffic. One, a multi-vehicle crash blocking the right lane. I-10 westbound at Paisano Drive. Watch for a backup there. I-10 westbound at Paseo del Norte, an injury accident. Police responding to a crash on the 54 Patriot northbound at Hondo Pass. Slow traffic on the 54 southbound between McCombs and Kenworthy, 5-minute delays. And an earlier accident off to the right, I-10 westbound at Red Road. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Wendy's $3 breakfast deal. Right now at Wendy's, enjoy the $3 breakfast deal. Choose between the bacon or sausage, egg, and Swiss croissant, and get a small seasoned potatoes for just $3. Because behind every great Wendy's deal is an even greater breakfast. Limited time only at participating U.S. Wendy's during breakfast hours.
Hey, El Paso, Ivan Ochoa, General Manager from Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. The Black Friday sales event starts now. So do yourself a favor and don't wait. Beat the rush and get door-busting Black Friday deals on every single new and certified pre-owned vehicle all month long.
Trade and upgrade for less with huge Black Friday savings all month long at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Upside down your current trade? We want it. Even if you owe thousands more than it's worth, regardless of make or model. Save thousands with 2.9% APR for 72 months, plus $3,000 off MSRP on the all-new 2022 Ram 1500 Lone Star with no payments till next year. Get $3,000 off MSRP on the all-new 2022 Dodge Charger GT, SXT, and on the all-new redesigned 2022 Jeep Compass with no payments till next year. All military personnel and first responders receive an additional discount. Thank you for your service. Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, where buying a car is fun. At I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina El Paso strong. Includes factory rebate and dealer discount plus TTNL. 2.9% APR is $15.15 per thousand finance on select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
Hi, I'm Dana Schwartz, host of the hit podcast Noble Blood. Join me on my new podcast, Stealing Superman, for a deep dive into the shocking true crime saga of the theft of a priceless comic book from the home of Nicolas Cage.
Someone targeted this very specific, very talented actor and stole something that is very specific to his interest.
Listen to Stealing Superman on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
A construction site is a noisy place where things can be misinterpreted. We need to redo the drywall. It can sound a lot like,
Rewire the hole? They're firing, Paul.
wait, what did I do? Or even,
Install a waterfall. Whose dumb idea was this?
be on the same page at every stage with Autodesk. From the designers to the field crew to the owner of the finished building. Autodesk Construction Cloud gives everyone clarity. Now, how about that drywall?
The El Conquistador Tucson, a Hilton resort, welcomes our neighbors from El Paso. We're your perfect staycation getaway, far enough away down I-10 with amazing hiking trails. This summer, we're knocking 20% off all food and beverage for our El Paso neighbors. HiltonElConquistador.com.
Red Pilled America is a storytelling show for patriots. We're the antidote to the one-sided narrative infecting most other entertainment shows. Listen to Red Pilled America on the free iHeartRadio app for great stories that'll entertain you without the wokeness. That's Red Pilled America.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you again for joining us for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, Facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the El Paso Facebook page, again, and also others on Facebook, Twitter at Talk El Paso, Twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk, or the YouTube channel, the Talk El Paso YouTube channel as well. So a lot of ways to get at us, a lot of ways to chime in, and of course, critically during this point in the show, you definitely can, as we do have that phone number up right now, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. A lot of questions coming in, those chiming in over on the social media, some different comments and questions coming out there about various things involving elections and things. Let me just say at this point on the elections don't care about your feelings. That's, I mean, if you just hope and wish that it's definitely going to work, I mean, you have about the same good chance of hoping and wishing you're going to win the lottery for that to actually have an impact, because what elections actually take is people going out and voting and getting the people to go out and vote. And I don't think it should be at all a controversial statement that the will of the people should be the only supreme thing when it comes to what is determining the outcome of our elections. And anyone in contravention of that, you're not going to have a easy time of making that point on this program, because it's not one I'm very particularly interested in broaching subject on, whether that means about making sure that only the right people vote. Now, sure, don't want uneducated voters, but we have set up rights and expectations of how those can work in this country along the lines of making it so that anyone can vote. And anytime that has been not the case, whether it be poll taxes, reading tests, grandfather clauses, those kind of things, have been vehemently against the concept of how elections are supposed to work, the democratic part of our process that goes into the representational form of government. And no, let's not do that ring around the rosy for the millionth time of, well, we're not really democracy, we're a republic. Neither of those pure classical systems are present here in the United States, because in a democracy, a pure democracy, everything is voted on individually by the citizens. And no, not everyone was a citizen. They had whole slave classes. So there's that part to unpack even within Athens. But beyond that, the idea of there being only a republic, we're not that either, because how did you choose senators or representatives in classical republics such as Rome? Here's a hint: they weren't elected. So we are a democratically elected constitutional republic is one of the fuller phrases to put it here. So if you're saying that, well, we're not a republic, we're a democracy, because you don't like the phrase republic being close to Republican or vice versa, I'm gonna need you to move on from that argument, because it's like arguing about what exact color you're calling the sky and therefore someone else is wrong. It's so much semantics and not getting at any of the heart of the issues here. And so while there, yes, are maybe some surprises and some upsets happening in this election, if it comes down to anything besides, yes, we've talked about election laws and how the idea of some of the courts may be intervening in them ahead of elections being of concern. And of course, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has not too much earlier than the program on today had that pulled up here just a second ago, essentially looking for calling for investigation into specifically Harris County and for the lack of resources, including ballots on election day available there. If any conclusions come down to anything besides the fact that, well, the people I didn't think won, that I didn't think would win, or the people I wanted to win didn't end up winning, therefore it has to be fraud, going to need you to figure out some actual evidence for that. Because anything along the lines of saying that, well, I didn't like it, therefore it must be wrong, that's not adult reasoning. That is very much juvenile kind of thought process ease. And the fact of the matter is there are people out there that are going to disagree with you, particularly in politics. And the fact of the matter is they may have some actual points to be made. And if they got more support, they did the legwork, you just hoping and wishing that it would be true doesn't work out that way here. Anyway, that's actually taking us through this next break right now. Again, we do have that phone line open, and we'll go ahead and take those at the top of the next hour here. If you want to get on the line, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Again, get on the line there if you want to. More of the comments, getting to more of that all after this next break. Stay tuned. More Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Back in a minute. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
2 crashes on the I-10 westbound slowing traffic. One, a multi-vehicle crash blocking the right lane. I-10 westbound at Paisano Drive. Watch for a backup there. I-10 westbound at Paseo del Norte, an injury accident. Police responding to a crash on the 54 Patriot northbound at Hondo Pass. Slow traffic on the 54 southbound between McCombs and Kenworthy, 5-minute delays. And an earlier accident off to the right, I-10 westbound at Red Road. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
A lot of things have changed with the real estate market this year. Hi, it's Glenn. But with Brian Birds of eXp Realty, you don't have to worry about whether it's a seller's market or a buyer's market, because Brian's exclusive options and unique strategies make the market work for you, whatever's going on. Brian spends 25 times more on marketing than most agents make in a year. That means he's going to get your home sold faster and for more money, because the potential buyers will see your home. And that is what creates demand, which gets you faster result and top dollar. In fact, he guarantees to sell it or he'll buy it himself. Another great option you need to sell quickly is Brian's instant cash offer. No showings, open houses, no hassle, just money in your pocket. Brian Birds is the agent that I would trust in El Paso. Besides that, well over 400 people have given Brian a 5-star Google review. You can read them by Googling Brian Birds. That's Brian, B-U-R-D-S, or check out brianbirds.com.
17 million veterans have served our country. Since 2001, more than 125,000 veterans have died by suicide. Hundreds of thousands more suffer from the invisible wounds of war. It's time to act. Homebase has provided life-saving world-class care to over 30,000 veterans and family members, all at no cost to them, from every state. The time to show your support is now. Donate today at homebase.org/iHeart and help our heroes heal. Make a gift, save a life. The time is now. Homebase.org/iHeart.
If you see something, why do you say something?
I see safe for my friends.
For my community.
For everyone here. We all have something worth protecting, a why that unifies us. Report suspicious activity to local authorities. If you see something, say something.
KTSM AM El Paso is News Radio 690. News
An
on the
iHeart
hour
radio
and
station.
the half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani will not face criminal charges in an investigation into his dealings with Ukraine. He's been under investigation for almost 2 years. A grand jury was looking into whether he violated laws requiring him to register as a foreign agent in a Ukraine lobbying case. But today, federal prosecutors informed the court that the investigation into Giuliani is over. Federal investigators in Texas have been hampered by heavy rains in their attempt to find clues to the weekend mid-air crash of 2 vintage planes. This happened at an air show in Dallas.
Neither aircraft was equipped with a flight data recorder or a cockpit voice recorder, often known as the black boxes.
The NTSB's Michael Graham says they were able to recover an electronic flight display from one plane and a GPS unit from the other. Those will give them clues as to what happened. 6 people were killed when 2 World War II-era military planes collided. Millions of Americans are bracing for an early winter as a storm system threatens to bring snow to people across 20 states. The storms will stretch from Texas to Illinois and bring some areas the first snowfall of the season. Meanwhile, the Gulf Coast region may see heavy rain, large hail, and tornadoes. Wall Street is closing lower as markets struggle for direction. Liz Warner has more.
Walmart shares weighed on the Dow a day before posting third quarter earnings. Investors also awaiting data on retail sales, jobless claims, and home sales this week. At the closing bell today, the Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 211 points. The S&P 500 fell 36 points.
California health officials are reporting the first death of a child under 5 years old due to the combined effects of the flu and RSV. To protect patient confidentiality, no additional information, including where the death occurred, is being released. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. Union leaders are calling for tougher penalties after a woman was accused of shoving a flight attendant during a weekend United Airlines flight. Perry Williams has more.
Transport Union Workers Local 556 Vice President Corliss King says disturbances and assaults on flights are at an all-time high.
That small number of people that are insistent on not complying, on being unruly, on behaving dangerously, represent a threat not just to flight crews, but to our flying passengers as well.
King is calling on Congress to pass the Abusive Passengers Act. The proposed law would create a list of abusive air travelers who would be banned from getting on commercial flights.
A new survey shows Americans grew more worried about inflation last month. The study out from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York showed inflation expectations for the year ahead jumped to nearly 6%, while the 3-year outlook increased to over 3%. Fears mainly came from a hike in gas prices. The Rockefeller Center Christmas tree will be lit up November 30th. Liz Warner has more.
The 82-foot tree has arrived in Manhattan to kick off the holidays after its 200-mile trek from upstate New York. At Rockefeller Plaza, the Norway spruce will be festooned with more than 50,000 LED lights and topped by a 900-pound Swarovski crystal star, with the official lighting ceremony broadcast live on NBC. After the ceremony, the tree will then be lit daily from 6 a.m. to 12 a.m., and on Christmas Day, the tree will remain lit for 24 hours.
The oldest living American is celebrating her 115th birthday. Iowa's Bessie Hendricks is officially the oldest person in the U.S. Hendricks was born in 1907 and in her lifetime has seen 21 presidents, 2 world wars, and even the sinking of the Titanic. She rang in the milestone birthday last week with her family. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
This report is sponsored by the Red Pilled America podcast.
Red Pilled America is a storytelling show for patriots. We're the antidote to the one-sided narrative infecting most other entertainment shows. Listen to Red Pilled America on the free iHeartRadio app for great stories that'll entertain you without the wokeness. That's Red Pilled America.
New on Curiosity Stream, the Nazis' true strength was their propaganda. You had posters, you had banners, you had music. See how a mastery of messaging galvanized Hitler's march to power in Project Nazi Blueprints of Evil. And if space is the final frontier, is it destined to be monetized? The battle between space exploration and galactic capitalism may have already begun. Don't miss Space Greed. Watch now on Curiosity Stream. Annual plans are $20, just $1.67 a month. Visit curiositystream.com.
What if there was an app where you could listen to this radio station plus hundreds more from across the country? What if that app had every song from every artist that you love, along with the biggest podcast in the world?
Impossible.
Well, we couldn't find an app with it all. So we made it. And then we made it completely free. The free iHeartRadio app is the future of audio, and it's available now in your app store. Listen to what you want, when you want, wherever you want to. Download the free iHeartRadio app for all the music, radio, and podcasts you love.
Being aware of the world around you is important.
When it comes to news, yes, I am.
So we're feeding your need to know 24/7 at the top and bottom of the hour.
I like to know what's going on in my locality, abroad.
Events of the world.
Fairly so. Yeah, I'm pretty connected.
Or down the street.
For the most part, I know what's going on.
You know, I need to be aware and what to look out for, and I'm real cautious, so yeah, I need to have that.
It's what we do. News Radio 690 KTSM.
City streets or small towns, everyone deserves a clean, green community. We are Keep America Beautiful, the nonprofit working to end littering, improve recycling, and beautify communities. Let's do beautiful things. Visit KAB.org.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk, and whole lot of the ways in between those. Even again, leave your comments on most of those. Yeah, Twitter's more of a DM kind of thing, but if you really want to, we can certainly take those messages that way. Just don't respond that well to spam or something in an entirely different language as I'm looking at there. Good luck with that, buddy. Anyway, if you really want to get at us and name the things that you think are important to us here in the borderland, because that's definitely part of our purpose here, talking about those things. One thing I wanted to get to before we get back to those calls here in just a second. Again, that number to call is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do see an interesting development in the August 3rd case, or specifically the most recent filing from the defense team, in that the lawyers for the indicted suspect, I will say Patrick Crucius, I'm going to say his name this time around, is accusing the El Paso district attorney and others in her office of, quote, outrageous conduct in a new filing in the case. It's according to our news partners over there at KFOX 14, who do have the copy of the full filing up there, and more specifically, saying that they have not been able to locate when serving and providing information to either District Attorney Rosales or Assistant District Attorney Curtis Cox, saying they have, quote, absconded and inveigled legal services of the subpoenas on them, and quoting directly from the actual filing here, quote, the process servers have attempted to serve Rosales at her office to no avail. They have attempted to serve her at her residence to no avail. They have attempted to serve her via her personal cell phone to no avail. They have attempted to serve her attorney, Luis Yanez, office to no avail. They have attempted to serve her through chief investigator to no avail. Again, the full 9-page document of the most recent court filing available over on the story of the same name. Walmart shootings defense accused El Paso DA others of, quote, misguiding, end quote, court. And there has not been much response to my understanding from the district attorney's office on this, as there is a gag order on the case on July 1st. So this is not them making public comments, but rather statements being filed actually as part of the court record on this. So that will be, and I think in this case, being referenced also here by our news partners there, that there are actually some of the related to on August 4th documents that allege the El Paso District Attorney's Office of some issues and potential impersonations of a family member was a victim in the August 3rd massacre. So that's a kerfuffle and one of the latest updates there. Not sure what this will actually mean for parts of it, but, well, of course, they'll keep us updated and focusing on there. Anyway, getting to those phone calls now. If you're wanting to chime in, there's also have Mondo Moncada over on the Twitch stream. Appreciate that. And if you're calling out journalistic integrity of particularly local journalists, you better come with receipts, because just saying, well, I don't like them or the company they're a part of, I got accused of that all the time, particularly when I was on TV. Still happens now, with no particular regard to what we're actually talking about. Again, if you're actually wanting to have any kind of traction and discussion about the local issues, maybe talk about the local issues and not try to take this 30,000-foot view, because you can miss a hell of a lot of detail whenever you're flying over the region, as I just saw getting back into town yesterday, late last night. In any case, let's get to those phone lines now. Again, the number to call if you want to get on the line is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. We do have Raul in the Northeast in the line with us here right now. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew. Well, the local elections prove again that El Paso is a blue
Democratic city, by Veronica Escobar being reelected to represent El Paso in Congress. The Democrats reelected Leo Samaniego as county judge and elected
Not Leo.
Democratic Sergio Coronado as the county commissioner. So, yeah, we have low voter turnout. Nothing unique about that in this country for midterm elections. But here we had a really big turnout. In fact, there was no red wave, with the Democrats maintaining control of the Senate. Ha ha! And Republicans may be winning the House with only a couple of seats. No red wave. Apparently, there was a lot of fake polls. You know, I've always thought that Rasmussen or Rasmussen is what we call a statistical outlier. And then they had this other group, Trafalgar, that I'd never heard about. But supposedly there were fake polls out there going on. So obviously they read it wrong. And the GOP is eating itself up. It's just great to watch it. You know, some Republicans want to replace Moscow Mitch as Senate Minority Leader. And Kevin McCarthy, he wants to be the Speaker of the House. But some folks say he's going to have a hell of a time becoming Speaker of the House because some Republicans are very upset with him for blaming Trump for the attack on the Capitol and then blowing it with and not getting more Republicans on the January 6th Congressional Investigating Committee. So it was not what they were expecting. And I'm seeing Fox News saying they don't know where that idea came from about a red wave when they were the ones that were pushing it. And as a matter of fact, another guy that's bailing out on Donald Trump is Rupert Murdoch. His newspaper called him Trumpy Dumpy or something like that. And they're starting to criticize him on Fox. Some Republicans have had it with him. He's an albatross around their neck. And if he announces, and I hope he does, because that'll guarantee a Democrat will win the presidency again. And it might be Biden, it might not. I don't care if it is President Biden. I think he's done a very good job in spite of everything that he inherited. But if he's not the Democratic nominee, I'm good with that too, because I'm not a cult member like these people who want Trump at all costs, a guy who was willing to do whatever it took, including a coup, to maintain power.
I mean, you're right in a few ways, but also just to make it clear here, it was Ricardo Samaniego, the county judge, who got reelected as part of the, again, local results there. Leo Samaniego being the relative cousin, to my understanding, and no longer with us. Just clarify that real quick. And I mean, sure, the whole concept of the red wave, red tsunami, red tide, however you want to put it, the way that was being talked about there ahead of it, did not materialize anywhere near to the degree that it did, including, in course, of in our area. And I mean, some of the things being talked about when it came to the, more locally, statewide, locally anyway. Of course, there was the discussion going on, including every time that Governor Greg Abbott came to town within, I'll just call it the last year or so, about focusing on those South Texas counties. Again, that one, let me pull up the list here, of specifically the 28th, the 15th, and the 34th congressional districts, of which there was some movement forward with. But, I mean, if you want to talk back to border areas, of course, Tony Gonzalez, the Republican incumbent for the Texas 23rd congressional district, that has, I'm just going to call it the majority of the border here in Texas, of course, keeping his seat there, handily defeating Democrat challenger John Lira about 56% to, let's call it 39%, with a significant third-party bid there by Lopez, but not quite working, not enough to make any kind of sizable difference, even if the numbers had been added elsewhere. So the idea of this red wave, of this movement, I mean, there's been, generally speaking, I was taking the historical perspective on it, of if there is dissatisfaction, I mean, there has been low polling being done for the White House administration, that when that is the case, the party in power, that if they align with the administration, tends to take it in the shorts, and maybe not as much here, because as much as it's the economy, stupid, has definitely been the point that I've been following and been most interested in seeing the most impact from. Whenever it comes to inflation or those things like that, whatever you claim it to be, from inherited from a previous administration or not, I mean, that's your prerogative. But whether or not people bought that, I think that there were also these smattering of other issues. I mean, sure, it was in one of the opinion polls coming out, not immediately before, but in the weeks leading up to the election, saying that major issues such as abortion were ranking, but ranking down like 9th in the list here. That's the thing about polling. There's the reason they put margins of error in them, because they're not always immediately exactly going to be those results, but also there are even some can be inherent issues to actually well, that are maybe not measurable that way, whether they are issues with how the sample is being conducted, because if you're doing it, say, by phone, and only those who pick up the phone, you're going to be losing, like, say, a lot of younger generations, which if it's a number I don't recognize on my phone, I don't pick it up these days. I'll let it go to message. And even then, there are some now phone systems or basically installed technology on cell phones that make it where it won't let the call go through. So that's some of the statistical error that can come in with that. I mean, polls are always interesting, informative in their own right. I mean, you track trajectories more than anything, but taking any one of them in hand as gospel would be a mistake in my mind at any given point during any of these elections here. But if you're talking about challenges or issues with the results here, I mean, there are going to be some, again, locally going to runoffs, some nationally going to runoffs, some recounts that are being triggered in some ways. So we'll see how this actually works out, whether or not it actually is Kevin McCarthy. Of course, he's got his own political issues even within his own party there. But I will say this. I mean, there was obviously a class within the Republican Party itself, even that maybe weren't considering themselves, well, not never Trumpers. Obviously, a lot of them got the axe in some of the intervening elections, but definitely may have considered themselves not necessarily on the actual board with it, but willing to, I kind of think Mitch McConnell in these ways, honestly, as willing to hold his nose as long as his agenda was also being served. So the enemy, my enemy is my friend, for lack of a better kind of phrasing on it. Even if, I mean, anything that the former president has been involved in, it's either his way or the highway is what it really comes down to. And yes, of course, there is much of the speculation and discussion, even some of those mentioning it in our comments right now, about potentially that announcement coming tomorrow. I'll be very interested to see if that actually happens or not, because more specifically, the possibility of a campaign, I have a supposition, nothing I can actually point to specifically, that this has been one of the more powerful fundraising tools. And frankly, for someone out of office and not coming up for election, as someone mentioned there, another 2 years. I forgot where that comment here is. Oh, Erica of On Hosting Rathlow saying probably something irrelevant. The election is 2 years away anyway, or 2 years away. And that is a very salient point. This would be a very early time to start even announcing those kind of things. But there's always been a little bit of ego involved in the former president. That's not a secret or anything that people should be dissuaded about, because, I mean, again, it's a reality TV star. You can't tell me there's not ego involved there. So if he's moving through that, I do wonder how the support will go behind him, whether he will be looking to once again build essentially his own base. And that's really, in my analysis, one of the biggest ways that happened in the run-up to the 2016 election, is he wasn't really tapping into the quote-unquote traditional or activated Republican base. And that's why I say this whole under the surface, this kind of submarining, as I've kind of put it, of campaigning, of building support that wasn't totally publicly visible because it wasn't happening in the traditional ways, been going on throughout. So whether he's going to be relying on his own kind of individual and personal supporters versus the way that some within the Republican Party and some constituencies have latched onto him and will continue to be supporting him, that's the kind of the major question we'll see, and why I think that making an announcement this soon could either be a ploy towards moving that base or trying to reconjoin them, or whether he's just going to be going for a, essentially, to use business terms as it always comes up with him, a forced takeover or continuing forced takeover of the Republican Party. There's that question we've asked: is it possible to consider yourself a current Republican without being a Trump supporter? I think that will essentially be the question at hand whenever we come to those potential next election announcements, those kind of things here. So let's get to, I'll tell you, we'll take that break right now. So thank you for the point in the call. Do appreciate it. And more comments coming in there. Get to more of those here after the break, and more calls on the line. So if you want to get on the line, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Taking more of those throughout the rest of the hour as we usually do. So send the line there if you're not, if you are already. If you're not, again, one more time, 915-544-5876. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
On Gateway South at Sean Haggerty, there's a crash that's blocking the right lane. Another accident on the 54 Patriot northbound at Hondo Pass with police on the scene. Slow traffic on Memorial Highway northbound between the 10 Gateway and Montana. That's a 5-minute backup. and an accident on Montwood Drive westbound east of Yarborough at Mosswood Drive. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
As you crunch the numbers trying to get the most out of your dollar, we'll throw in a $1,000 inflation bonus. Much better. Listen every hour from 9 a.m. through 5 p.m. weekdays for your chance to win $1,000.
Listen to win $1,000 every hour, weekdays from 9 a.m. through 5 p.m. It's the 1,000 inflation bonus on News Talk 690 a.m.
This report is sponsored by the Mark Moss Show podcast. The crypto markets are melting down again with the crash of the second largest crypto exchange after it was attacked. I'm Mark Moss, helping you navigate the decentralized revolution. So listen to the Mark Moss Show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, El Paso, Ivan Ochoa, General Manager from Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. The Black Friday sales event starts now, so do yourself a favor and don't wait. Beat the rush and get door-busting Black Friday deals on every single new and certified pre-owned vehicle all month long.
Trade and upgrade for less with huge Black Friday savings all month long at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Upside down your current trade? We want it. Even if you owe thousands more than it's worth, regardless of make or model. Save thousands with 2.9% APR for 72 months, plus $3,000 off MSRP on the all-new 2022 Ram 1500 Lone Star with no payments till next year. Get $3,000 off MSRP on the all-new 2022 Dodge Charger GT, SXT, and on the all-new redesigned 2022 Jeep Compass with no payments till next year. All military personnel and first responders receive an additional discount. Thank you for your service. Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, where buying a car is fun. At I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina, El Paso. El Paso Strong. Includes factory rebate and dealer discount plus TTNL. 2.9% APR is $15.15 per thousand. Finance on select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
Ad paid for by the Sentinel Group. Attention parents with a child diagnosed with autism or severe ADHD. A recent congressional study found dangerously high levels of toxic heavy metals like mercury, lead, and arsenic in many popular baby food brands. Brands such as Gerber, Plum Organics, Beech-Nut, Walmart, and more. Some contain toxic metals 200 times the maximum safe levels set by the FDA. Heavy metals in baby food are known to be severe neurotoxins, and exposure to them at a young age can cause lifelong brain damage and neurodevelopmental disorders like autism and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. If you fed baby food to your child and they were later diagnosed with autism, autism spectrum disorders, or ADHD, you may be entitled to significant compensation. Call today for your free consultation. 800-653-9716. Don't wait. Let our experienced attorneys fight to get you the compensation you deserve, and you pay nothing unless there's a recovery in your favor. Call 800-653-9716. That's 800-653-9716. Again, 800-653-9716.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages. We're up on these days, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. Do have those phone lines open as well at this point during the program. Full up at the moment, but if you want to get on the line, get in, ready to call in later, squeeze in, I guess I should say, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. Yes, back live in the studio today. I want to take a brief mention of what we were doing out there. I was actually, believe it or not, on a cruise, but it was related to, you may have heard on some of our either other hosts or things like that being mentioned on air, the ability to win one. Well, essentially, as part of that, they gave me the opportunity to go along to see it. It was part of the Allure of the Seas relaunching from its new port in Galveston. It's a brand new shiny snazzy shipping facility and a loading and a docking facility down there in Galveston. So that's where I was. And no, I did not pick the timing of it because frankly, I wasn't even sure I'd be able to go with it being so close to Election Day, but they prevailed and management did as well. So got the chance to see that. So the reason I bring that up is not to be like, so what were y'all doing? There might be more chances to win more of those cruises coming up. So stay tuned. We'll definitely tell you all about it. And I don't know, maybe I'll get to go on another one. I may have had a change of heart whenever it comes to that. Never been on one before, but that's where I was the last 3 days of on-air time here. So again, and a weird timing and not the one I would have picked, but I think it worked out overall, particularly as we brought you in the meantime, in the interim, some of the updates on what was going on with the elections and, of course, some of those important interviews about those that are either now going into office or are, well, essentially going to be going back into the elections here as much as possible. We're bringing more on those as we get closer to that December date now. But in the meantime, let's get to some of those phone calls on the line here. Again, the number to call, we'll pull up the moment. I'll give that another way here. Monta Moncada saying cruises are for newlyweds and the nearly dead. Honestly, not a lot of those on either of that, and I don't think I fall into either of those categories, as just doesn't work out that way. So again, if you've got your perspective on it, you're entitled to it, but my perspective was changed. I will say that much for the moment here. But let's go to those phone lines now. We have James in Central on the line here right now. James, thanks for joining us.
Yes, okay. I'm calling because I think we need election reform in this country.
Okay.
And one thing for sure is I think we need more political parties. Look, Mexico's not a perfect country, but remember when the PRI party used to dominate and steal elections? Now they have been weakened themselves. I don't know how many political parties there are in Mexico, but the PRI and PAN are not as strong as the Action Party. The Revolution Party, they're not as strong as they used to be, and more people are running, and more women are running for political office in Mexico too. And don't be surprised that they have the first woman president, south of the border. But I'll tell you, we do need to have. It's time that we listen to other people's ideas. We need maybe 4 or 5 political. But I'm not saying Mexico is perfect, but we do need election reform. Let's start like making El Paso. What happened to that bill or that? What is it that was supposed to go before city council? Those petitions. What happened to that? That's what I was inquiring about too.
Yeah, so on those ones there, they did not make it onto this election. They will be coming up in, I think the date approximately May, give or take. So some of those, some of them were denied by city council, and there are, of course, other methods that can be taken on by that. But some of the ones about, say, the way voting can work here, some of those will show up in some ways. After I found out they weren't going to be on this ballot, we kind of didn't focus on them as much here, but there are still more of that to come up here. Of course, there were some of the ones that we were talking about previously. I mean, we talked about a lot of petitions in the last 6 months, more than I can ever really remembering it come up in any kind of significant way. The idea of there actually being changes to it, those will be coming up in future elections, so stay tuned for more details on that once it's actually coming up there. But specifically to the idea of there being multiple parties, there is a kind of, it's not exactly a simple comment, but it's called the Duverger's law, that essentially that the way our elections are structured makes it so that the existence of third parties is more or less impossible, because if a third party becomes successful, essentially they have not become another choice in the ballot. They will then tend to simply replace one of the existing ones, one of the longtime ones. It's happened a few times over the history of the country. Of course, we used to have Tories and Whigs, or, loyalists and royalists, if you want to go back to the Revolution time. But even then, like there were the Federalists, the Anti-Federalists, those kind of concepts. And so there's been shifts on it. The last real significant one, historically speaking, I would say would probably be Bull Moose, though, libertarians are making a move or a push for it. But the problem is that it's not necessarily we're conspiring to keep everyone else out, but rather a way that's almost like a law of nature, like, gravitational attraction kind of thing. The idea that because any party in power is going to want to keep power, ultimately. They may say a lot of other things, but that's unfortunately how it goes. And the party out of power wants to gain power. So what does the party out of power do to try and achieve that? All other things being equal, they will try to bring more people and absorb more ideas, so to speak. I mean, there's been phrases such as like big tent or inclusive, or those kind of phrases used whenever it comes to party structure previously. And those all come down to the idea of we want more people voting for us. So how do they go about doing that? They can't necessarily, there's obviously attempts to convince people of the other party, those kind of things. But one of the more effective ways, and the ways that it tends to end up working, is by bringing in other parties that are also feeling they're not represented by the party in power. Whether or not exactly by saying making alliances, or just kind of absorbing them amoeba style, kind of the best way I think of it. And by doing so, they try to make it so that they have a greater base of electorate to then get into power, and then they work on consolidating. So it's this kind of cycle that keeps going through. And so that if there is enough of upheaval that one of the parties gets replaced, then that new party, the new one in power, or the new one that is now represented and are having a bigger share than the previous party, will then tend to do the same thing, called Duverger's principle, basically. And so when we have these first past the post elections, meaning that if you get 50% plus one of the vote for, say, representative, then that means that effectively the rest of the votes, as much as this may go against the idea I put out there of everyone should go out to vote because it's important. I mean, in that kind of an election, in that kind of situation, everyone else may not have as well have shown up because their votes are therefore essentially not regarded anymore. They have no power in that election. Only the majority does. That's why we do have important things such as majority rules, minority rights, because the idea of majority being able to do trample over everything does not sit well with us either. But once you start getting into multi-member representation districts, meaning that yes, it wouldn't be you're voting necessarily for one candidate, but rather for a party and their slate of candidates. And as opposed to, say, there being the Texas 16th, 23rd, 34th, 18th, whatever, it being okay, this is the West Texas district that has 5 seats allotted to it, and the vote will therefore be done proportionately. Now, if there were to be one party gets 50, 51, 55% of the vote, they will get that representation, that proportional amount. So they'll get about, 3 of those seats. But then the remaining, like say there was a 20% amount, they would get a seat. But say there was someone even eking out like say 15 or something like that, exactly how the numbers work out, they would still get 1 seat. So it's only in that. And you might wonder about there being other countries such as Mexico, or more, I think the most pointed to on this being more in the European, such as, Parliament or other countries like that. They have multi-member representation districts. So you're not voting for one representative, you're voting for a number of them, and you kind of rank the ones that you want. Now, this is different. It involves ranked choice voting, but it's slightly different from it in that, but it's necessarily a feature of it. And that's why I say, sure, people call for a third party, wanting more choices on the ballot. But honestly, the way the U.S. is set up, we're talking about Article 1, Section 1 stuff being changed within the U.S. Constitution. So, yeah, I'm not going to hold my breath on that as much as, again, this is where I have my magic wand that I seem to constantly be misplacing here, about being able to change things without having to have a whole, because honestly, we're talking about political upheaval to the order of magnitude of the Civil War. Not saying it'll take a Civil War to do it, but that it's that level of things are willing to be moved and changed and shifted, because at the outcome of the Civil War, of course, there were the amendments added, such as the 13th, 14th, 15th, and so on and so forth. And it's taking that level of things and willingness to change things that takes that level of change to be able to get in there. So not gonna hold my breath on that one here, but it's an interesting idea and one I'm more than willing to discuss here. So thank you for the point in the call. Do appreciate it. Let's get to one more quick call before we hit that next break. We do have Frankie and Masia with us right now. Frankie, thanks for joining us.
All right. Hot diggity dog, you are back. I'm so excited. And you're going to say about what your little ship thing that you went on later in the program. I want to listen to that.
Okay.
But, spoiler alert, gloating call. After the election, the great state of New Mexico, land of enchantment, has got Democrats from the top to the bottom state and top to the bottom federal representation. So eat your hearts out, everybody. Now, having said that, my heart soars like an eagle after all the rest of the United States of America citizens voted with a brain. And I've mentioned this to you before, to you and everybody in the Southwest border region. You cannot operate a democratic society if the majority of your electorate or the majority of those people voting are stupid. So that says to me there's still a small percentage of people out there in our lovely country that got their brains screwed on right. That's what I want to say.
I mean, yes, education, that was you're talking about the Federalists and anti-Federalists, of course, here. Education, even from those not wanting major centralized control, such as Thomas Jefferson, was very much in favor of education of the populace, because essentially he recognized that it was in order to put the reins of power into the hands of the people as opposed to a ruling select few, removing the concept of the idea that some are born saddled and others are born booted and spurred, meaning therefore they have control over the rest of those that are born saddled, is the way he was getting at to it. I mean, we had a lot of agrarian society back then. That's what a lot of the metaphors were used as. But to make it so that the people were able to make informed decisions, they had to be educated, because doing anything less than that makes it so that, well, bringing up the Mexico example from previous, I mean, talking about election fraud that happened down there, where it would be that your boss would tell you how your vote, or even send you in there with your ballot filled out, that kind of thing. That does not work as an actual representational democracy, because if there are a select few actually selecting it, doesn't work out, doesn't actually represent the will of the people. Government is inherently not supposed to be fast reacting. It's supposed to set trajectories and long-term plans and kind of be slow moving because it's the fickleness that ends up making it, well, the most unrealistically able to be dealt with by, say, business concerns and other things. So yes, education is supremely important, but it has to be more than just babysitting too, which is something that unfortunately comes down to it has been a part of the conversations I've been having with people in recent days anyway, about the idea of modern schooling, because seriously, if we're not actually teaching people how to think critically, make decisions for themselves, and be functioning members of society, we're just kicking that can down the road of a potential return to minority rule.
Well, I hear you on that. But as a final point, let me just say this, and it was from the great John Wayne, and I'm paraphrasing, but I think I got this thing nailed down right. John Wayne, in one of his movies, said to one of his people out there, he said, "Hey, son, life is hard, and it's harder if you're stupid." So I want everybody else to know that smart is better than being stupid. There you go. Have a good day, Andrew.
You too as well. Appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one.
All right.
All right, and with that, we'll go ahead and take that overdue for that next break. Now, again, if you want to get on the line, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update. El Paso Electric started improvements on its electrical infrastructure along North Saragossa Road to Salt Kleinfeld on the Far East Side this morning. The project will consist of replacing transmission and distribution power lines and the installation of steel poles to ensure reliability in electrical services. It'll be affecting traffic in that area. The construction will be from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. and then start again from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. There will be road closures intermittently involved. Vista del Sol, Pelicano, Rojas, Saragossa, Montwood, Golden Gate, and Salt Kleinfeld will be affected. The project is expected to end on January 23rd of next year. And expect cooler temperatures and breezy conditions across the borderland this week as we see a series of disturbances and cold fronts. Temperatures will stay cooler to colder over the next few days, with highs dropping into the 50s and lows into the 30s and 20s in Las Cruces. I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
On Gateway South at Sean Haggerty, there's a crash that's blocking the right lane. Another accident on the 54 Patriot northbound at Hondo Pass with police on the scene. Slow traffic on Memorial Highway northbound between the 10 Gateway and Montana. That's a 5-minute backup. And an accident on Montwood Drive westbound east of Yarborough at Mosswood Drive. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. We start off our work week with the cooler air mass that moved in the morning. Now that's going to leave most of us with freezing temperatures tonight, and we may be dealing with our first freeze of the season in the El Paso metro area. Our cooler air will remain in place as a couple more fronts are expected to move through this week, each one bringing in some colder air, keeping us well below average. Log on to kfoxtv.com for your very latest forecast.
This report is sponsored by the Mark Moss Show podcast. The SEC just gave a controversial ruling, creating an enormous risk for almost every single cryptocurrency out there. I'm Mark Moss, helping you navigate the decentralized revolution. Listen to the Mark Moss Show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
For the local issues and discussion you won't get anywhere else, turn to Talk El Paso, weekdays at 4 right here on News Radio 690 KTSM, brought to you in part by the El Paso Community Foundation. Sound off on what matters to you, Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m., and let's talk El Paso.
When your children go to play at someone else's home or they attend a sleepover, ask the homeowner if there is a firearm present and how it is being stored. These are important questions that every parent should ask to help keep their children safe. For resources on how to talk to others about gun safety or information on safe gun storage options, go to safegunstoragetexas.com. Let's keep them safe, Texas. Brought to you by the Texas Department of Public Safety.
Attention Medicare beneficiaries. Annual enrollment is from October 15th to December 7th. This is the time to select a Medicare Advantage plan and start enjoying great benefits. Part C plans can help you add vision, dental, hearing, prescriptions, gym membership, and some plans can even help reduce the cost of Part B. If you are new to Medicare or just need to renew, Medicare Prepare is here to help. Visit them at 10295 North Loop Drive or call Medicare Prepare at 915-626-5113. In-home appointments available.
Buffalo Bill Cody is a name we all know, but a man we don't know much about. Be sure to catch this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This report is sponsored by the Our American Stories podcast.
The most current and comprehensive. Just minutes away at the top and bottom of the hour, and always online at KTSMradio.com. El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, being on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv. Andrew J. Polk back in the saddle here as we are this week and bringing you all the live and local shows we are through. Well, I mean, we got those like holiday times coming up here, and we're not expect you all to be like here on like Christmas or Thanksgiving or any of those kind of days here. So we'll probably have some replacements in for y'all. But otherwise, back live, local, all the things that we need to talk about here. So to that end, let's get back to the phone lines here. Again, if you want to get on the line here before the end of the program, squeeze it in, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM is the number to call there. And we got a couple calls on the line right now. We do have Kevin on the east side with us right now. Kevin, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew. I think there's something that bears repeating
in
regarding your show, and that is that this is not a biased political show that you put on, such as we have with other hosts on the radio and on the TV.
Sure.
Or before they open their mouths, you can tell what side of the political spectrum they fall on. You, as the way I see it, are the referee in the arena. And people will come and talk, and your job, of course, is to make sure each gets a good hearing and there's no profanity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Definitely.
I resent it, really, when people ask you or try to persuade you to give your own political opinion, such as, who did you vote for, which I heard a couple of months ago, or who are you going to support in this election? That's not your job. And this is what makes your show so unique and so interesting, is that it follows the title of the show, Talk El Paso, not Talk Republican or Talk Democrat. And I appreciate that because this is what we need in this city. We need opinions going back and forth, but we don't need anybody trying to convince the host, who's the referee, that that person is right or wrong. So I just think that bears repeating, and that's about all I got to say.
All right. Well, I appreciate the point in the call, and essentially what we're trying to get at there. So glad someone's getting it out there. So again, do appreciate it. You have a good one there.
You too. Thank you, Andrew.
Appreciate it, and definitely due course here. And of course, I mean, there's already discussion on there. That's what you're saying. I like those talk shows. You don't have to not like those talk shows. Again, we have other shows even on this airwaves, and we trust those hosts to do what they do best. But what I think, and particularly locally, we need is just more discussion about the issues. Yeah, I'm not here to pontificate. Sermons make me sleepy at best here. I was never one of those like still kids in the church pew here, and don't think it would work out much better for me in these days other ways here. I mean, sure, I'm attention enough for a meeting or a sermon or whatever, but definitely end up having to have a cup of coffee afterwards. That's just it is for me. And Stephen Christopher agreeing with that. But of course, some disagreement going on there, even such as Eric McNabb saying that I'm a conservative talk show host. His news contributors are KFOX, right-wing propaganda outlet. You have this guy Fooled Polk here. Well, let me just tell you, if you actually like engaged with the issues and the way we talk about them here, as opposed to bringing in your biases and these assumptions that, I mean, I think it really comes down to it that there's a lot of people out there that think if you're not saying something in favor of my views, if you're not defending and saying exactly that, therefore you're opposed to them and therefore you're against me. It's like anti-disestablishmentarianism. I can't think of a better way to put it. That's not a real word, but seriously, the idea that if you're not with me, you're against me, and if you're not even saying something, if you're saying something that questions anything that I believe, you're therefore opposed to me. That is not, I mean, you want to talk about hyper-partisanship at its core, that's a really big part of it. And if you think that that's the way, that the only way it can be, my way or the highway, you might be a former and potentially future, again, presidential candidate, or you might be missing the point entirely, I gotta say. Because, yeah, we take on a lot of things, including talking about promoting conspiracy theories. I've been talking about what is actually possible of the outcomes from this investigation. I haven't even been talking about the actual reasoning behind it. But if you're taking that as well, you're against me, therefore you're saying something not in support of me, therefore you're against me, you're kind of just proving my point there, my dude. Anyway, let's take at least one more call before we hit that next break here right now. We do have Jerry in the Northwest here on the line here right now. Jerry, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Andrew, for taking my call.
Sure thing.
And I agree with the last caller. It's good for us to have a discussion, no matter what side you're on. That
Absolutely.
way we know what point of view you have.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well,
I'll agree with that.
Not necessarily you. I'm talking about the people that are discussing it.
Yeah, no, I would say that's accurate. And I mean, if people can't discuss and saying either you're with me or against me and I have nothing to say with you in the meantime here, that is super not how this is supposed to work as a country, as a concept, or as anything besides, well, that's boiling down to single party rule, which never really works out.
No, and even in the family unit, if the mom and the dad don't discuss things and it's all one way, either dad or mom, the children suffer.
Yeah, I mean, and even perspectives of the children, like, sure, parents need to lead and those kind of things and, guide them in their upbringing. But if you're not taking into consideration, like, the child's needs or the child's wants here, that's how you end up with, well, kids who only come in to put you in the retirement home and eventually the funeral home. Like, it doesn't work out well in the long run.
That's correct. Now, to answer some of the questions, I do agree with Frankie. Intelligence needs to be handled out there. It's not real intelligent to shut down all our manufacturing of oil and natural gas and then not consider the outcome of that, which is the higher prices of everything. So that was not a smart move on the part of Joe Biden. Not only did it put people out of work, it raised everything in price.
Yeah, I mean, when it really comes down to the idea of, I mean, there's been this global shift. I mean, going well beyond the bounds of what you're talking about there in the U.S., and maybe not totally global, but away from the manufacturing to the so-called service economy. That would be, high tech, high education, making things more possible here. And that's why you've got things like the steel belt, now called the Rust Belt, and those kind of things. And it might not be totally possible to all the way move back to that, but anything towards that is short-sighted at best in my mind, particularly when it comes to oil and gas, those kind of things. I mean, sure, there were stated positions being done by this administration and by many of the, congressional supporters of it in their elections about wanting to eliminate that. And I'm not even saying that that's a bad trajectory to set, but I'm saying just demanding it happen from essentially one day to the next or in any kind of short order is unrealistic at best and damaging to, say, economy, livelihoods, people's ability to earn a living at worst.
Yes, well, it took almost 50 years for us to get rid of the horse and buggy. There were still people in the 1950s in the United States using horse and buggy. Not everybody, but there still were people riding horses, going from one point to the next, and having buggies.
Oh, that's absolutely accurate. In fact, there's, if I'm not mistaken on my dates here, down at the El Paso Museum of History, they may have moved exhibits around, but they previously had, along with the whole Mandy the Mule thing, they had the public water horse fountain. So it doesn't look like a regular fountain. It was this big copper-looking bowl that was in El Paso, in downtown El Paso, until like the 1940s. So, yeah, that's an example.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And you get out to the rural areas, they even had horse troughs and still had a hitching post.
Oh yeah, heck. Went out
know.
Montana when I saw someone still doing roping, cattle ranching, and he was on horseback out there. It still exists, absolutely.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So you're not going to get rid of a lot of this stuff. You're not going to be able to plow the field with an electric tractor that will only run 3 hours. The field won't. You can't do it.
Yeah, and then there's whole issues about the DRM and the programming behind it, and how farmers are now having to get into programming and essentially that's a whole other subject that I've read up about. But it's if people understood how food systems in this country work and how the impacts on, say, digital rights management, the DRM I'm talking about, and how that's affecting farmers and tractors, and why there's still a premium on like 1970s tractors versus the newest things because of programming, that's a whole show right there and its own fraught conversation.
Yes, sir. Well, anyway, I wanted to say there was a tsunami, but it was in the areas where the ocean was. In Florida, you had a tsunami, and basically in Texas, you had a tsunami. And the things with tsunamis is, first off, there's a great big sucking thing that sucks all the stuff off back out to the ocean. Then the big wave comes. Right now, we're still in the suck part. So just letting you know. You all have a good day. Thank you.
Sure thing. Appreciate the point, the call. You have a good one there as well. I think the sucking you're referring to there, I think a better way to describe it here would be the water rushing out. So if you're ever on a beach and all of a sudden the water seems to get way, way, way lower, you should run inland, because that's the prelude to the wave. Not exactly the calm before the storm, but all that water takes up space. And if a bunch of it's going to be coming up, it's got to first go out to meet it here. So and James Radcliffe making a point there about the idea about some of those theories that are out there about the population collapse, and some of those are, I know demographers are talking about that. I'm mostly interested in those, and I know that specific point of that would actually be Russia, but that's another point to be brought up there. But let's take that last break right now. We'll squeeze in what we can and tell you what we got coming up for you on the show here, so stay tuned. More of the last bit of Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
On northbound Geronimo Drive at the 10 Gateway, an accident there is blocking the right lane. Another crash on the Gateway South at Sean Haggerty, blocking the right lane. Stay to the left. I-10 westbound slow from the Loop to the Patriot with 5-minute delays. And watch for an accident reported on Alameda Avenue at Americas Avenue. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by the Mark Moss Show podcast.
The SEC just gave a controversial ruling, creating an enormous risk for almost every single cryptocurrency out there. I'm Mark Moss, helping you navigate the decentralized revolution. Listen to the Mark Moss Show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You wash your hands, you brush your teeth, but what about the nose? How do you clean your nose? With Navage. Navage uses powered suction to pull saline in one nostril, around the back of the nose, and out the other nostril, flushing out allergens, mucus, and germs. And it's why cleaning your nose, the body's air filter, is the next evolution in daily personal hygiene. People try Navage for lots of reasons: sinusitis, colds, allergies, snoring, things that make it hard to breathe through your nose. But over time, they find that cleaning their nose makes them feel better, a lot better. Over 3 million Navage users have written more than 100,000 reviews, averaging 4.7 stars, saying, "Best product I've ever used," and "Amazing, I love my Navage." Navage helps you breathe better, sleep deeper, and snore less, but the biggest payoff is improved health. Navage is good personal hygiene and can help you stay healthier. At Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Target, and online. Navage, N-A-V-A-G-E, clean nose, healthy life.
This is a special alert to all Americans who own a vehicle with less than 200,000 miles with an auto warranty about to expire or with no warranty coverage at all. Due to a decline in the economy, CarShield is announcing a low-cost month-to-month vehicle protection plan that is now available to the public to save any driver out-of-pocket expenses on future auto repairs. Call now to find out how you can pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. Yes, you heard that correctly. Pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. An open phone line has been established for all drivers to call for a free quick quote. Call 800-838-4715 now. Drivers who are covered will not have to pay for covered repairs again. This protection plan is at an all-time low. Additionally, drivers who activate this vehicle protection today will also receive free roadside assistance, free towing, and car rental options at no additional cost. Call us for your free quick quote today. 800-838-4715. That's 800-838-4715. What do you have to lose? Call 800-838-4715. Again, 800-838-4715.
Because everyone deserves excellent medical care, El Paso has its own free community medical clinic. RotoCare is a free walk-in clinic located at 301 South Schutz Drive and is devoted to improving the health of all El Pasoans, including those without insurance or legal documentation. RotoCare is open most Saturdays from 9 a.m. to noon. For more information, call 790-0700. RotoCare, because everyone deserves excellent medical care.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for having joined us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. A couple of things we want to tell you about coming up for you this week. Of course, beyond even just some of the election results, we'll be delving more into those runoff races, trying to fill in the gaps of the interviews we may not have been able to get to or able to schedule ahead of the election. So we got more candidates. We'll be revisiting with them, those kind of things, but also immigration situations, those going on, what some of the dashboard things and the local numbers and local situations I've been able to see for myself, particularly in some of these travel things, because I got in late last night from the Galveston area, flying back most of the day here. So don't worry, we're not sick or trying to avoid you all. We're back in the saddle. I'm back with live show for the remainder of this week and for the coming weeks. Again, we got holidays coming up, but we'll talk about those schedules as they come to it. But in the meantime, I want to thank everyone that did tune in, call in, comment, participate in the show. We'll have to leave it there for today, but we'll do it again tomorrow, 4 to 6 p.m., as we do every Monday through Friday. There's a lot to talk about in our area, and we will keep focusing on that and the important issues. So in the meantime, I want you all to stay safe out there, look twice for motorcycles when out on the road, and have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
On northbound Geronimo Drive at the 10 Gateway, an accident there is blocking the right lane. Another crash on the Gateway South at Sean Haggerty, blocking the right lane. Stay to the left. I-10 westbound slow from the Loop to the Patriot with 5-minute delays. And watch for an accident reported on Alameda Avenue at Americas Avenue. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
A lot of things have changed with the real estate market this year. Hi, it's Glenn. But with Brian Birds of eXp Realty, you don't have to worry about whether it's a seller's market or a buyer's market, because Brian's exclusive options and unique strategies make the market work for you, whatever's going on. Brian spends 25 times more on marketing than most agents make in a year. That means he's going to get your home sold faster and for more money, because the potential buyers will see your home. And that is what creates demand, which gets you faster result and top dollar. In fact, he guarantees to sell it or he'll buy it himself. Another great option you need to sell quickly is Brian's instant cash offer. No showings, open houses, no hassle, just money in your pocket. Brian Birds is the agent that I would trust in El Paso. Besides that, well over 400 people have given Brian a 5-star Google review. You can read them by Googling Brian Birds. That's Brian, B-U-R-D-S, or check out brianbirds.com.
Portions of the following program were pre-recorded.
The following is made possible by Dad.
Why was the basketball court all wet? Because the players kept dribbling all over it.
The dad joke. Corny